Dito ko lang nakakausap ang ulan ng punong kahoy. Dito ko naaamoy ang malungkot na alimuom. Hier nur hier kann ich mit dem Regen der Bäume sprechen. Hier nur kann ich die traurigen Nebelschwaden riechen. Das pochende Herz wird noch lebendig sein, wenn die verstörten Vögel aus ihren Gittern fliegen. Nur hier legt sich der Wind um mich herum und die Stimmen der Verborgenen bleiben nicht stumm. Hier nur schimmern die Spuren des Anfangs durch. Hier nur ist bezeugt, dass sich in meiner Brust Stern und Baum verbinden. Ich begrüße Sie sehr herzlich, meine Damen und Herren, hier in der philippinischen Botschaft mit diesen Zeilen aus einem Gedicht von Luna Sicat Cleto. Herzlichen Dank, Frau Botschafterin, Her Excellency Irene Susan Natividad, für die Gastfreundschaft. Und Sie sehen es bereits, wir sind hier mehrsprachig unterwegs. Es stehen Simultanübersetzungen zur Verfügung, weil ich jetzt dann gleich auf Englisch wechseln werde und der Rest des Programms wird auch Englisch stattfinden. Darf ich fragen, haben alle, die Kopfhörer brauchen für die Simultanübersetzung, diese Kopfhörer? Gibt es da noch ein Problem? Wenn nicht, dann sage ich Welcome here in the Philippine Embassy, and thank you very much Cornelia Schmidt and Johannes Hampel for the simultaneous translation. The lines I read from the poem by Luna Sicat Cleto were read by herself last October at the Frankfurt Book Fair. It was an experiment. She wanted to know if by reading this poem she could reach a moment of calmness in the hustle and bustle of the fairground, kind of sense of being connected to everybody but being with herself in that moment where poetry comes from. And as I was there, I think I can say she did it. And that's why I wanted to start this evening here with this poem, and also because it contains major themes that you will hear about tonight. One is luscious nature. We will hear about such nature, but nature under threat in a country where climate change has effects much more grave than it is here yet. Another theme is violence, historical violence, present violence, the resistance to it, and the desire to be free. But most of it, this poem is one of my favorite by Luna Sicat Cleto because it reminds me of an expression in Tagalog that's hard to translate. That expression is sarap ng buhay. I don't quite know it, but you would maybe say the deliciousness of life, or just the idea that life itself could be such a pleasure. And I hope that you will realize that with destruction, violence, and everything, there is still interwoven this vision or this presence of sarap ng buhay. We will take 45 to 50 minutes with different presentations, and afterwards you will have the chance to talk to 4 people on different tables and being served delicious wine and other things to drink. And you can talk to Paulo Herras about graphic novels, to Karina Bolasco about social science and literary fiction, to Kristian Cordero about poetry, fiction, and all other matters, and to Tina Pangan of the National Book Development Board on book signing schedules, events, etc. But to start with the formal program, I'm honored to announce her ambassador, Her Excellency the Ambassador. Thank you.
Danke schön. What's up? Vielen Dank, Annette. Guten Abend, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I guess you're here because you're friends of the Filipinos. You are lovers of books, of art, and culture, and you will get a feel of all of those three tonight. I'd like to just welcome all of you to the Philippine Embassy. Tonight is part of a series of activities that the Philippine Committee for our Guest of Honor participation at the Frankfurt Book Fair have put up since last year and will extend until this year in the lead up to our Guest of Honor participation at the 2025 Frankfurter Buchmesse in October. So tonight you will be able to listen, to talk to have conversations and dig deeper into narratives of the Filipinos. This morning at the press conference, we heard a lot of big numbers. I think you will hear them again tonight, like 7,641 islands, 130 ethno-linguistic groups, close to 114 million Filipinos populating all those thousands of islands. 10% of that number are overseas in over 200 countries and territories. So we're very universal, and we need our literature, our art, our culture has also to be shared with the rest of the world. You have a big migrant community here in Germany, about 35,000 of them, and they have their own stories to tell. So tonight also we'd like to hear a message from a great lady without whom we will not be here tonight. The Philippines maybe will still be a country that is not known to many. The richness, diversity of our culture and literature will not be known to many of you here tonight. So it's my honor, and I'd like to ask you to listen to the message of the Honorable Senator Lauren Legarda, a visionary and the driving force behind the Philippines' participation at the 2025 Frankfurter Buchmesse in October.
Exactly a decade ago, in 2015, the Philippines made its return to the Frankfurt Book Fair after a 15-year absence since its last participation in year 2000. It was a modest stand for a culturally rich nation. In the year we made our comeback, we had already set our sights on our major goal to be the guest of honor country at the world's largest book fair. The Philippines, an archipelagic nation in Southeast Asia, is a confluence of historical, ecological, and cultural narratives that have shaped its distinct literary tradition. As a country comprising 7,641 islands and a population projected in 2025 to be at 113 million, alongside a diaspora of over 10 million, its literature emerges from a complex interplay of indigenous knowledge systems, colonial legacies, and global exchanges. Positioned within the Coral Triangle, the world's epicenter of marine biodiversity, the Philippines boasts a rich natural environment that has profoundly informed its literary and artistic expressions. This ecological wealth, coupled with a history of trade, migration, and colonization, has resulted in a literary tradition that navigates themes of identity, resilience, and transformation. Beyond geography, our heritage is woven from at least 135 ethno-linguistic groups, each contributing to an evolving, multi-layered cultural identity. The Philippines' colonial history, spanning over 300 years, has offered further complexity to this identity, leading to literary expressions deeply engaged with world literature, post-colonial discourse, and decolonial perspectives. our writers have skillfully translated historical and cultural forms into narratives that are uniquely Filipino yet globally resonant. This literary imagination continues to flourish as we bring our voices to the world stage. The Frankfurt Book Fair and, for the first time, the Leipzig Book Fair offer invaluable platforms for showcasing our stories to the world. It is quite ironic for a nation whose independence was inspired by books to be late at the world's oldest book fair. We waited 100 years after our freedom from colonial rule to participate in the FBM. In 1998, in our inaugural FBM participation, 45 publishers displayed 302 book titles under the theme Centennial of the Philippine Independence on a stand that was only 8 square meters. As a 4-term senator, I am fully aware of the importance of reading in enriching the mind, especially in enhancing critical thinking. As such, when Karina Bolasco, who was then among the board members of the National Book Development Board, reached out to me for support to be able to participate in the 2015 FBM, I was eager to find a solution. In 2016, we were able to provide support for a Philippine stand, albeit small. In the year 2017, I met with FBM officials led by Mr. Jürgen Boos when they visited Manila. I informed them that we were keen to be the guest of honor country. In the same year, the National Book Development Board formalized it through a letter of intent. We did all the necessary preparations to ensure that our bid will be accepted, and while the pandemic affected the timelines, we did not put our dreams on hold until the Philippines Guest of Honor role was approved and formalized in 2023. A decade after its sustained participation, the Philippines is now at the center of the Frankfurt Book Fair, a very powerful stage. Government funding, institutional support, policy initiatives are crucial in ensuring that Philippine literature continues to flourish, not just at the Frankfurt Book Fair and other international literary events, but in all avenues where our stories deserve to be heard. Sustained investment in the art world and creative sphere are both essential, as literature is not merely an artistic pursuit but a vital force in cultural diplomacy, national identity, and global dialogue. Germany is also the fitting stage to unfold Philippine literature's finest. After all, Germany has always been a gracious host of Philippine literature. From that time of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, to the present, Germany has played a vital role in our literary and historical journey, providing a space where our stories, envisioned and told, can be shared with the world. This country holds a precious place in Philippine history, deeply intertwined with Rizal's life and work. Heidelberg had always captivated him that he dedicated a poem to it. Wilhelmsfeld, where he lived in the vicarage of Pastor Karl Ulmer, and in Berlin, where his most important work, Noli Me Tangere, was first published. This novel stirred the hearts of the colonized Filipinos that it ignited a revolution, which led to our inevitable independence. As we take our place as guest of honor for the FBM 2025, we come full circle, honoring a literary legacy that began with Dr. Jose Rizal. Fittingly, we have chosen the theme, "The Imagination Peoples the Air," a line from his Noli Me Tangere, reflecting the boundless creativity and enduring spirit of Philippine literature. We hope that this central role would open the floodgates for more Filipino authors, translators, artists, and publishers to present our literary wealth. While we acknowledge that English, being one of the two official languages in the Philippines, the other is Filipino, gives our literature an advantage in presenting to a global audience, we recognize it is not enough if we aim for a distinct cultural voice to be heard by everyone. Thus, to complement our important role at the 2025 FBM, we enhanced our translation subsidy program under the NBDB, ensuring that more Philippine books can be accessed by a wider audience. Some of these books will have German editions available at Leipzig and more at Frankfurt. This undertaking would not have been possible without the collaboration among the Philippine government agencies involved: the National Book Development Board, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, NCCA, the Department of Foreign Affairs, the DFA, and my office in the Senate, together with the support from the Frankfurter Buchmesse led by Jürgen Boos. We've also prepared other events as part of our Guest of Honor program. Aside from our first ever participation in the Leipzig Book Fair, we've launched last March 15 an exhibition at a Heidelberger Kunstverein titled Oculus, featuring a collaboration between Filipino visual artist Stephanie Misa and German artist Joshua Steffens. The exhibit was curated by Dr. Patrick Flores, who is also the curator of the Philippines Guest of Honor Pavilion. Several other activities are being prepared, the details of which we will share with you in due time in person and in our website. I also invite you to follow our social media channels, where we continue to share original content that brings our stories to life. Finally, I would like to thank the German media for your support in all that we do. We are very much grateful and look forward to further partnerships with all of you. From Rizal's Berlin to Frankfurt's Grand Halls, the Philippine story continues, written in ink, lived in memory, and now voiced on the world's largest literary stage. What began as a dream, nurtured by a decade of dedication, has become a defining moment in our literary journey. Yet this is not the final chapter. It is merely a powerful prelude. For literature does not flourish in isolation. It thrives in the embrace of a nation that values its storytellers, in the steadfast support of a government that understands that words are not just vessels, but bridges of diplomacy, shared humanity, and identity. Vielen Dank, and see you in more of our programs in the Philippine Pavilion in the Frankfurt Book Fair.
Yes, you've heard the name Karina Bolasco. She is our next speaker, and she comes from a world where publishing and literature is a lot of work and has often very little glamour. Karina Bolasco is the co-founder of Anvil Press, one of the biggest publishing houses in the Philippines. She headed for a long time the Ateneo de Manila University Press, and she is one of the many people who devoted her working life to other writers, while she is actually a poet herself. And she has been active in various government and non-government organizations, entities that I will not all name, that have brought the Philippine industry a far way. And she will now talk to you about the bookseller situation in the Philippines. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Annette. Good evening, everyone. Picture an archipelago of 7,641 islands. There it goes again. 7,641 islands. Imagine how books are distributed across waters and within the islands. That is a challenge that has managed to be, actually, it's the pandemic of 2020 and 2021 that has managed to solve it. The story is because as we were locked down in our homes, and in the early part of that lockdown, then President Duterte only allowed movement of medicines and food, nothing else. But we advocated and we said that books are as essential as food and medicines. And so as so many publishers who didn't know at all how to sell their books online, had to learn quickly how to sell, how to push, promote, and sell online. And that somehow, they learned how to make book trailers the way movie trailers are. They learned to be savvy. They learned how to use technology as quickly as they could. Otherwise, they would have to have been shut down. So this somehow solved the problem because in the 90s, yeah, I'm that old and has been in the publishing business in the Philippines for so long. There really were no bookstores outside of Metro Manila. There were book sections in department stores and other general merchandise stores. In most, books were not even on shelves. They were just piled up in boxes and one had to rummage through to find certain titles. It wasn't until the big bookstores in Metro Manila farmed out into the provinces, locating themselves in malls as the malls opened everywhere. They also opened branches where books were sold at the same prices they were being sold in Metro Manila. So the cities acquired bookstores. You know what they say, a town is not a town until it has a bookstore. National Bookstore was the biggest book chain in the Philippines with 250 outlets all over the country. We are delighted that you are here with us as booksellers, dear booksellers, who could join, you have joined us tonight. You are our important partner, as you are also the important partner of German publishers who invested in German editions of Philippine works. You booksellers, we as booksellers and you as booksellers match the books with their readers and push up literacy levels of a nation. I had to cancel, man. I'm guilty as charged as maybe the one who's spoken the longest this morning. And since many of you were here also this morning, I think, yeah, most of you, I don't have to repeat many of the parts in this talk. The Philippine book market, like any in the world, is diverse to readers, as readers tend to prefer certain genres. I mean, you have genres like fiction, nonfiction, poetry, romance, and new adult, children's books, and young adult graphic novels and comics. There are leaders in every genre because I think it's smart for most publishers to focus on a particular and be the leader of a particular genre. The way that, you know, we have Precious Pages for paperback romances in Filipino, Aklat Adarna for children's literature, 19th Avenida and Comiket for graphic novels and comics. And textbook publishers lead the pack in sales because they have a captive school market. Indie presses are beginning to emerge. They're winning prizes. They're located in communities or universities and are learning to respond to the needs of the community. You've heard about Barnes & Noble in the United States and how they had to close down because of Amazon. But now Barnes & Noble is coming back. They're emerging now as community stores. That means they have to know the needs of every community and put books in their shops that are responsive to the needs of the community. In the Philippines also, we have our number of titles released. Sorry, Mappy. The number of titles released last year grew by 26% from the year before. But it's not as big as maybe what other countries in Southeast Asia are producing. Our big production last year is about 13,000 titles. I'm sure most of you would say, especially here, that that's nothing, right? But this is because we are considered, our book market is considered an extension of the US market. The ratio now, which is a bit better, there's one local book for every 24 imported books. So when you go to a bookstore in the Philippines, it will be 80% American books, and we have a small corner where you have Philippine books. It's the reverse. In most other countries, you have the local dominating the shelves, on the shelves, and you have a small foreign book section. So this huge divide somehow explains why our local production is small. No? But we are happy to see that that is changing because of the indie publishers also coming up. So this dependence on imported books goes all the way back to history, to our past with the United States. When they set up the public school system, the textbooks were also, I'm sorry, I'm not following the script, sorry. Sorry. Even the textbooks of the public school system from the 1900s to maybe before the Second World War were all manufactured in the States. They were all imported and then brought to the Philippines. So there is that long tradition. And in fact, I think one of the treaties that were set up before we were allowed to be a republic in 1946 specifically states that the Philippine book market is an extension of the U.S. market. So, okay, so that's many of the things the senator has told us, has shared with us the story of how we became Guest of Honor. And our theme, she also talked about the imagination peoples the air, which is our Guest of Honor theme, a line from the Noli Me Tangere, our very first book connection with Germany, because this is the subversive novel written by Jose Rizal, which inspired the first anti-colonial revolution in Southeast Asia. And this was printed in Berlin by a press that was run by all women. As Guest of Honor country this October, we will come as a delegation maybe of about 150 creatives. We will bring fictionists, essayists, dramatists, filmmakers, graphic novelists, and comic writers, children's book illustrators, book designers, writers of romances, and new adult narratives. So we will definitely support all the German publishers who invested in translating our works. Next week, we will debut at the Leipzig Book Messe, where I am told it's the biggest literary festival in Germany. Here we have the lineup of authors who will be speaking at 10 stages in the Book Messe and outside of the Book Messe. Daryll and J are here with us and will later share or read parts or excerpts from their books. The lineup of authors and the program of events are all uploaded in the Leipzig Book Messe dashboard. They're also in your press. I don't know, are we also giving the press kit to the booksellers? And, okay, and the Philippines as guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair is more than just a participation in the world's biggest book fair. It is a defining moment for the country's cultural and intellectual engagement on the world stage. We invite you all again to join our June 26 press conference at the Evangelist Academy Frankfurt. We enjoin you to carry in your stores the German editions of our works, which will be discussed later. And there is nothing like a bookstore where readers come as a community, where they can think about all that's being said in the pages of all the books on the shelves, on your shelves, share wonderful and compelling stories inspired by both the past and the future, and know of other peoples from far and unknown countries. There's a very different synergy in a bookseller's space. The smell of book paper, the atmosphere of a library, there's curiosity about a new book, and a delight in simply finding the unexpected, and to know that people are still thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karina. Now you will hear Kristian Cordero. He is what we call in German a Tausendsasser. He writes poetry, and there is rumors that the novel is in the air. And he translated poems by Rilke and into German, into Bicolano, and actually the Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, equally. Bicolano is the language of the region Bicol in the Philippines. There, Kristian heads the Naga, Ateneo de Naga University Press, and he's part of a vibrant team running the bookshop Savage Minds, that he will tell you later. And what I find very impressive also is that Kristian manages to put some of the more than 130 languages of the Philippines into very new and novel connections in Bicol. He is very much active in the GOH, the Guest of Honour project, and you will be able to talk to him and to Karina later in person at the tables. Kristian, the floor is yours.
Many years ago, this country served as an intellectual haven for our country's national hero, Jose Rizal, a medic, a multimedia artist, and a martyr. While studying in Spain, he took the opportunity to travel and network with other Filipino ilustrados and Europeans. Most of them are free thinkers, fellow artists, and radicals like him. Living under the oppressive colonial regime in the 19th century Philippines and taking advantage of the spirit of change that augured the birth of this new republic in the tropics, Jose Rizal deeply connected with Germany and called this part of the world as his scientific mother country. In one of his letters, he revealed how people in the Philippines regarded him. To the natives, he was curiously referred as the German doctor. But to the threatened Spanish authorities, he was suspected to be a German spy. Today, we come here not as a special agents or secret agents, but to honor this gracious invitation accorded to our young nation to be the guest of honor of the 77th edition of the Frankfurt Book Messe. And I cannot but think of this as coming into a full circle. A circle which does not mean completion or an end in itself, but rather as an energy, a synthesis in the Hegelian sense of the world, of the word, that we hope will create a new Pentecost among each and every one of us. I will be using some religious reference along the way, so please bear with me. A circle that we hope will multiply and bring forth a renewed understanding of our deep connection as a people. Here, Rizal breathed the air of freedom and imagination. Here, he began and finished part of his 2 novels, which have become the prima facie of the Filipino imagination. Here we have come, now we are here, to quote the poet Jose Garcia Villa. One of my favorite essays on books is written by Walter Benjamin. He's unpacking the library, a speech on collecting. I cannot but remember Rizal, who, like Benjamin, was also a nomadic spirit who traveled with his book collections of about 2,000 books. Some of these books were received as barters when he was in exile in Dapitan. In exchange for the various specimens he sent to Germany, some of them are in Berlin, he requested books including volumes of Sophocles, Aeschylus, and the stories of Google in German and other Russian authors he could have missed. An orthodox in his reading selections, Rizal would also venture into translating some of these books and stories into his native Tagalog. He was a translator, particularly the children's tales of the Grimm brothers, which I guess is worth noting as we explore the theme of this book festival, which highlights how our literature continues to incarnate our people's imagination. The imagination peoples there, lifted from Jose Rizal's first novel, Pinupuno ang hangin ng hiwatig. Pinupuno ang hangin ng hiwatig is an invitation for us to conduct our spaces with the materiality of books, inducted by the spirit of creativity, of imagination, and of freedom. By way of translation and by making these books accessible in the Philippines, Rizal peopled our air with the stories that made the Filipino an essential part of our narrative communities. Books when they travel. I'm addressing the booksellers in the room. Books when they travel and inhabit, like other objects, are charged with the same mysterious aura that magically transforms our locus. Published here in Berlin in 1887, copies of the novel Noli Me Tangere were treated as an illegal item that merits absolute penalty of death and eternal damnation. In a colonial society like ours, books like that of Rizal were treated as a virus, a reference to the 2020, a dangerous trailblazer like that of a comet that contains poisonous gases. The colonial authorities have all the reasons in the world to fear such contraband. In an atmosphere that is peopled with ignorance and oppression, the novels of Rizal ignited a new air, a formidable spirit which we hope to share with you and for you and to the world, so that we usher into a new kind of communion, another religious reference. 138 years after, we, Filipino writers, a small band of translators and publishers and booksellers, return to Berlin, to the birthplace of Noli Me Tangere, to Germany, to this continent, bringing some of our books now available in the language of Goethe, Hegel, Kant, Rilke, Kafka, Hesse, to mention a few. The Filipino graphic novels that have been translated into German are creative productions of how the Filipino fashion themselves as creators of images and as images of creation. It is in and through this interplay that we continue to produce a kind of enchantment that asks us to go and seek our interiority, to our dark forest, which remains as our most potent portals. This interiority, I will elaborate, this sense of inwardness or the kalooban is best experienced in our faith in a common and shared space, in the idea of kapuwang. This ka, is a prefix that indicates the other, who is a kaibigan, a friend, a kasama, as a companion. And puwang, the puwang there, means the space that envelopes us, be it in the waters, in the lands, or in the air. Ito ang hiwaga ng hiwatig. We are magkakapuwang. We all share that space. All life forms, including the non-living, the visible and the invisible, we all create a space, a tapestry, a sky, where these stories remain as essential bonds to our community. A narrative community, though, in the Philippines is a listening community. The power and intimacies of our oral literature is in its oral receptions, how it sounds inside of us and moves us to meanings and actions. This power and this intimacy are both reflected in the poetry of Luna Sicat Cleto and the fictions of Jose Dalisay, Blaise Campo Gacoscos, Jessica Safra, and Daryll Delgado. In reading the works of Filipino authors, I would like to particularly invite each and every one of you to listen to it carefully. Listen to it. Build and feel the soundscapes around the text and see how in the beginning is not the word, nor the meaning, but the sound. Of interest to me is what Annette Hug shared in one translation forum in Manila. This is, we have an evidence of this. When she said that it's high time to liberate the German language by translating other poetry from other parts of the world. In Luna Sicat Cleto's Tagalog poetry collection, Annette found her first ally in her mission to animate our languages. Dalisay's two novels, now available in German, are manifestations of the novelistic tradition initiated by Rizal, that the matrix of these literary works remain rooted in the need for social reforms and transformations, that literature is a diagnosis of this cancerous condition, is the long shadow that Rizal cast on our writings. For better or for worse, we continue to see literature as a mirror of our morals, as a compass to our futures. Unlike in the My Story, you will put this event in your story, no? In social media platforms that creates this endless sense of emptiness of the ego, a self-commodity self with no binding force, the Filipino stories continue to intimate and inhabit us with this kind of philosophy which we call pagpupuwang, that in my humble opinion is what makes our team possible. Pinupuwangan natin. Imagination peoples the air is an invitation for us to participate in charging the world with pakikipagkapwa, pakikipagpuwang. Our national artist, Francisco Arceliana, invoked, we must seek to close all open things and open all closed things, so that those who have long received may learn to give, and all those who have long given may learn to receive. And all those who have too long apart may for once come together, and all those too long together may be sundered. In a world charted by Budget Ton, Paulo Heras, Russell Molina, Ace Enriquez, J. Philip Ignacio, Mike Alcazaren, Noel Pascual, AJ Bernardo, Renren Galeno, and Archie Oclos, we see how the poetic invocation of Arceliana come to life, as the wise are now fools for once, and the fools, like me, may now speak their minds. The long denied are now affirmed, like the stray cats in Manila. For the unfulfilled at last, once and for all, are now fulfilled. In Delgado's first novel, Remains, we are to listen to this cacophony of voices and stories coming out as survivors and witnesses of one of the strongest typhoons in recent memory. This ecological disaster, which directly hit the author's hometown, is recorded through the novel's accounting of the people's paranoia and the glorious anticipation of a parousia, a sort of a second coming, similar to that of Douglas MacArthur, who landed in the same province of Leyte during the so-called liberation, but this time takes the forms of solidarity funds, relief operators, and climate crisis responders, including its main character, Anne, who had to experience his own heteroglossia. I'm looking at the translators right now. By writing in a language known as Waray and in English, and by keeping the language of her birth, Delgado is invoking a space, a puwang that can only be filled by her own voice in that particular language known as Waray, which in the same language called Waray, Waray actually means nothing. Nothing. 138 years ago, we heard a similar story of an impending political typhoon that is set to ravage a town called San Diego. Of the characters created by Rizal, I'd like to direct your attention to Sisa, mother of two boys, Basilio and Crispin, who were wrongfully accused of stealing church funds. In the last part of chapter 21, the German edition is coming very soon, Rizal described how Sisa's voice started to utter rare notes that are not often produced in the human throat, a babble of mourning in one's own body. Such sound would dare confront the night of roaring tempest, described to have been formed by the whirling winds, which has transfigured into some winged creature, an aswang laot probably, whose shadow is cast upon the ruins of sullen and smoldering buildings, an angel perhaps, or the angel of history, as referred by Walter Benjamin. But in Rizal, the same angel of terror and of anguish could be the same angel who brushes over Sisa's pallid countenance, wiping all her sorrows from her memory to give way to the sweet remedy of forgetfulness. The same angel that moves Sisa the next day to wonder and smile, to sing and talk to all creatures of the woods and the fields. Sisa started to speak and sing in tongues, which the Guardia Civil could not understand, that they dismiss it as nothing.
I could almost smell it as soon as I saw it. The rotting, the decay. Do not stress on the second syllable. The local word came to me as the plane angled and I had a better view of the festering city, prostrate on the island's narrow tip. The once green island looked like an enormous animal carcass jutting out from the edge of the sea. The plane's position shifted and we lost sight of the island. All of a sudden, there was nothing but intense blue water reflecting cloudless skies and, almost imperceptibly, our military plane wavering in the ripples like a black fly. For a while there, it felt like we were going to make a water landing. And then the plane righted itself before tilting toward land. As the island came into clearer view, I couldn't help but overlay it with digital images of the storm repeatedly flashed in the news. Blue, green, yellow, red swirls around a black dot of an eye. A perfect storm, they said it was, and the tiny city right in its eye. Since I began monitoring the news, I also started feeling a pulsating sensation on my own eyes even when I closed them. Not that I closed them much, as I was operating on an average of 2 hours of sleep per day for the last 6 days. But awake or asleep, colors continued to burst under my eyelids. A rather nauseating experience comparable to a bad trip I once had after ingesting cheap synthetic stuff. Meanwhile, Ground Zero, as what they've been calling the city, and from what I could see, looked like it was drained of color entirely. Unrecognizable. This is completely unrecognizable to me. I heard one of the men behind me gasp and mumble something else I couldn't make sense of. Jeff, I think that's what his name was. New to the disaster scene, I could tell, from the almost crisp khaki cargo pants and the still visible Columbia brand on his jacket. I guess the pilots could tell too, that's why they crammed him with me in the cockpit. This used to be such a beautiful city, the military officer next to him said. I remembered one of the commentaries I read only that morning. It was as though the fantasy lid on the province, famed for being the hometown of the other half of the conjugal dictatorship, has finally been blown off and filthy vapors inevitably released. At the airport, I handed Dino his pay and additional cash for the family. He quietly accepted. He was back to being subdued. I told him I will have some food and medical supplies delivered to him directly by my colleagues who will be taking over from me so that he and the kids didn't have to line up for relief goods. He just nodded. Thank you, Dins, ha? Salamat liwat, Ann. Okay ka na? Okay na ni mo trabaho? Let me know la if you need anything else. I didn't tell Dino that I couldn't sleep again the night before, despite the beer we consumed at Gio's, despite my exhaustion and then my crying. I didn't want him reporting anything to Alice. Along with the face of the beast, the broken child in the wooden cabinet, and the blazing eyes of the crazy woman in the street, which were the ones hardest to ward off, I kept turning over and over everything I said to Dino and tried to recall each of his reactions. I kept agonizing over which parts I could have left out, which parts I could have compensated with something else. I just had a strong feeling that I missed something important again. And I knew that this one would take some time to recover and repair. And maybe I needed to give Dino that time too. When I offered for him and his family and Tita Lina to come to Manila with me, to stay with me and Manupat in the house in Quezon City, he shook his head and smiled sardonically, even disdainfully. We live here, and we can't just leave. But others have left, are leaving. You can return when things get better. That's what I told Manupat. He looked at me as though I didn't have any idea of what I was talking about, as though I would never get it, and as though he could no longer stand the sight of me. My heart palpitated, and I felt my palms starting to sweat again. We stood next to each other on the runway, not speaking, not looking at each other, while waiting for my turn to board the C-130. I tried to distract myself, tried to ignore the lump in my throat by looking out to the sea, which that day was at its bluest and calmest. Dad would have said that it looked like a katre in mga Bulawan, a bed of gems glimmering in the fierce sunlight. I thought it was being especially cruel that day, taunting us, the dead, decaying city with its brilliant beauty. Thank you.
We also lost the bookshop in 2024. So this issue is very, very real. As we prepare for October 2025, we hope that you will allow our Filipino books to share the space in your bookshops and libraries, that you will welcome these titles as your kapuwang. Fill your shelves with these strange natives that now inhabits in your language. In the coming months, another 17 titles from the Philippines will be released in its German editions. Some of these works include a novel entitled Dekada 70, a novel set during the fateful years of martial law by the author Luwalhati Bautista, and a personal memoir by Patricia Evangelista that bears witness to a murderous regime that believes that some people like us need killing. Take note of their names, Luwalhati Bautista and Patricia Evangelista. These are two Filipino women writing in the tradition of prophetic witnessing, very similar to the two Johns of the Bible, Bautista and Evangelista. Reeling from the experience of the pandemic, we have this book of essays on health, culture, and society by Gideon Lasco, whose book, The Philippines is Not a Small Country, is a runaway bestseller. And yes, there is a reprinted edition of Noli Me Tangere and a new German edition of Rizal's El Filibusterismo. All these and many are the books that we hope will create a new conversation and conversion among us. To conclude, I'd like to share with you that we are here not to sell our stories, but to tell our stories. We are here to create communities, as we do not solely see our books as commodities. We leave the story selling and embrace instead the old and reliable art of storytelling. So instead of book selling, we move towards book telling. We must tell stories about our books. We must be enchanted. And to be enchanted is to enter and join in the chanting and the excitement. To stay awake and never forget those who have fallen into the night, as Rizal would always admonish us. And to keep singing despite being detained. despite being kept in the dark. There will be singing even about the librarian with only one book. And yes, as Bertolt Brecht would say, there will be singing even about the dark times.
Thank you very much, Kristian. Thank you, Daryll Delgado. And actually, some people have asked me, but the Philippines, will it be a free presentation of books? Will critical voices be heard at the book fair? And that there is a very anarchist thread running through Philippine literature and to this presentation. You can gauge from the fact that I announced 45 minutes, and you know we're going overboard. But there will be a very free presentation of books criticizing, for example, the war on drugs run by former President Rodrigo Duterte. That was the book by Patricia Evangelista, presented by Kristian. Now we come to J. Philip Ignacio. He will present a graphic novel, Alandal. This is the last book we present. Before, we will then have a conversation with Gizem Adjaman, also known as Meg10, who responded with her music to this graphic novel. J. Ignacio, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Let me just give you a brief introduction about this book. So Alandal, where does that name come from? The name is, to use the language of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Alandal is an Easter egg. Alandal it refers to Al-Andalus. And you will see where that comes into the picture when you read the story. And this is set in the... Do we have the map next? Yeah, okay. Okay. So, the story takes place here. Not in the big island of Mindanao, but in a small patch in the Sulu archipelago, which is a predominantly Islamic portion of my country. And so you will see some reference Al-Andalus and the religion of Al-Andalus and the parallels in my part of the world. These are some of the books that I used as part of my research. It is in these books where the accounts of the Sulu pirates clashed with the Christianized Visayan warriors of my country. And the Christianized Visayan warriors were combining their sword fighting knowledge along with Spanish fencing, and that brought about the martial art we call today arnis. And the martial art practiced by the Sulu pirates is known as silat. These are two very different martial arts, and I was imagining the clash between silat practicing Sulu pirates versus the emerging arnis martial art that we know today. And I'm sure it was very violent and also probably cinematically spectacular. And that inspired this whole graphic novel. Now, the artist who illustrated the pages of this book is the legendary Alex Nino. Alex Nino became world famous in the 1970s when he started working for DC Comics. He was hired from Manila by the editor-in-chief of DC Comics at that time, along with many other Filipinos. And that period of the 1970s was known as the Filipino invasion of American comics. And Alex Nino was a major part of that scene. And it was a great privilege for him to come out of retirement to illustrate this story that I pitched to him very informally. Next slide, please. Okay, so he created two wonderful covers because the original plan was for me to publish this in Tagalog. I actually wrote it in Tagalog. So this was meant to be the Tagalog edition cover, and the other one was meant for an English edition. But these two covers are, they work like tiles. I don't know what the German word is for tiles, but they connect on all sides. So they can be connected horizontally and also the other, and then vertically as well. And yeah, the wild imagination of Alex Nino is a major part of this graphic novel. It is meant to showcase the greatness of the old man. Next slide, please. And from here, I shall do a reading of the very first chapter. (1762). For 200 years, European empires have been competing for Asia's wealth and resources. At the height of this game of conquest, Spain lost its pearl in the Orient and surrendered the city of Manila to the British, while further south on an island in the Sulu Sea, the forces of Sultan Ali rubbed salt to a gaping Spanish wound. Strewn on the beaches of the city of Jolo were corpses of Moro warriors and what remained of Spaniards and Chavacano tribesmen that they took down with them, burned, blown up, and hacked to pieces. The sole heir of the great Sultan Ali, Prince Ibrahim of the Seven Eldest, unleashed his wrath and turned the sea red. In the distance, 3 Manila galleons fled, firing cannons at the Sultan's royal fleet at their wake. A 4th galleon idled, waiting nervously for its commander, a conquistador named Sevillano Rodriguez. Wielding a Toledo saber in one hand and carrying an infant in the other, Rodriguez sprinted from the Sultan's palace towards the dock, next to a burning village. A renowned swordsman, Rodriguez fended off every attack and dodged every bullet, keeping the child safe, though a little rattled from the ferocity of warfare. Almost there. A few more strides. A cannonball blew up the boardwalk, cutting off his escape. The galleon was now beyond reach. Rodriguez's eyes were singed and his ears rang. The infant screamed through her aching lungs. When the smoke cleared, Rodriguez and child found themselves surrounded by the 7 eldest and the tips of their swords. Okay. It's over, Rodriguez. Put down your sword and hand me the child. Rodriguez dropped his sword onto the sand and fell on his knees with his head down in defeat. He raised the child up for Ibrahim to take. Ibrahim approached, but soon realized his mistake. In one slick move, Rodriguez dug his knee onto the handle of the saber, raising the tip of the blade right into Ibrahim's eye. Rodriguez took off with the child towards a battered parao that he spied floating nearby and rode off as fast as he could, as far away from these cursed shores as possible. Leave him be, lest we injure the child. If she dies at sea, it will not be my doing. In his mission to steal the kingdom of Sulu, a battered outrigger boat was all that Rodriguez successfully went away with. Defeated and now burdened with a captive, he hoped to sail to friendlier shores. After days at the mercy of the elements, father and child faced certain death. Finally, Rodriguez saw dry land. But was that a mosque in the distance? That shiny thing on top, was it a cross? Whether he was delirious or not, or if the child was now dead, he couldn't tell. The sun was setting fast, and he was fading away. He looked at the lifeless child, cried dry tears, and collapsed. The boat drifted into the mangroves. From the watchtower, bells clanged and guards yelled, "Iranon! Iranon raiders approaching!" Armed villagers marched towards the approaching boat with spears and swords drawn, ready to respond to what they thought was another raid. "Put down your weapons. Carry him to the village. Bring water for the poor infant, quickly." And in this last page, there is no dialogue, there's no text. It is just meant to act as a montage of events where the priest took the child and her father in and took care of them and made them well. And thus ends the first chapter.
Thank you, J. Ignacio. And now I ask Gisem also to join us here for a short conversation before we end this formal part with your scoring. Yes. You have been very active in the German musical scene. I read that you are very active in hip-hop, in other, in R&B, Y2K. Is that it is and I was told to tell that the NCCA is very proud to have worked with somebody who's been featured in Vogue Germany, in Vice, and in High Snobiety. And so I already said that the NCCA, that's the National Commission of Culture and the Arts, is accompanying this Frankfurt Book Fair project with exchanges organized between German and Philippine writers, artists of all scenes. So my first question actually to you is, how did you meet Jay? Or how did this come together?
Okay, so we actually asked this question to the people who brought us together, because we didn't know each other beforehand. We met in person for the first time today. Before, it was only via Zoom. And yeah, I was told that we were brought together basically by fate. Or like, that's what we like to believe, because we connect on very different things. And he's a musician as well, I learned today. Yes, and yeah, so I think it was just fate that brought us together.
Okay. And while I learned that in life, this is the first time you actually met. You had Zoom contacts, etc. But when you were reading Alan Dahl, whom did you meet? Like from the story, what came to you from that story?
So to me, I think I really resonated with Sabina. Who you, I think, didn't mention in the first chapter, but that's the baby. Yeah, because like I consider myself very feminist, and that's like what I am about also when it comes to music. And I thought that I don't want to take away too much from the story. I want y'all to read it because it's like really, really good. But I think she, like her being a warrior and her being like resisting colonial powers, and like also having this like internal like this internal monologue about like her heritage and her identity. Like all of these things resonated very much with me. And in the Zoom call with Jay, I also wanted to hear what was inspiring to him, like what he was listening to also while writing the book. And because like I like to work with references when I work with artists. And so, yeah, I tried to incorporate the different references. He told me he listened to Ottoman Empire music. I'm Turkish. So this is in my wheelhouse. So, yeah, these were like the bits and pieces that I picked up and like pieced them together.
Yeah. Thank you. And Jay, when you, because Meg 10 is very accessible on internet, I enjoyed the preparation for this evening, listening to your DJ sets, to also the work of Homie, a very important like safe space community for women, queer, non-binary people in the hip-hop scene. And I guess you did that too. What connects you to the music of Meg 10?
For me, of having been a band player in the 90s, I'm also familiar with what DJs do. There is a lot of, aside from sampling, there's also a lot of improvisation going on in the head, and improvisation is in my DNA. With the work I have done for 17 years of my life as a performer of in improvisational theater. So there is this synergy between us that I didn't know would be there because I hadn't known her prior to the Zoom meeting, and I saw when I saw her name, oh, she's Turkish. And when she asked me, indeed, about what I was listening to, I was really listening to Ottoman music.
And he's learning to play oud, which is also...
Yeah, I play a little bit of the oud and the darbuka. And I am a frequent visitor to Istanbul.
And there is darbuka in the music as well, but I also try to incorporate some Filipino music elements like kulintang.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
because
there's
a scene in this chapter where she made music. It's called a pangalay. It is a traditional dance, usually performed at weddings, but sometimes they do it to welcome guests. And I was recently in that part of the Sulu Sea about 2 weeks ago, and to welcome my team, they performed a pangalay for us, which I recorded. And that's the video I sent her, and she was able to incorporate elements of that.
Before we hear your scoring, just one question, because you mentioned the 90s. When I studied in the Philippines, women's studies in Manila, but there was often the sentence pronounced, "No one can be free until all of us are free." And I heard you say that in a performance in the Boiler Room Festival in Berlin. So, like my question before we hear the scoring to both of you, what does this sentence that has somehow come across time, "No one can be free until all of us are free," what's your pressing comment on that?
So it wasn't me who said it. I sampled a speech by a dear friend of mine, Emilia Roig, who is a Black Jewish author of French descent, and she expressed those words at a demonstration, at a protest that was like pro-Palestine. And yeah, that was my intention at the time, because I had this big stage with the Boiler Room set and I wanted to make a statement. And so this was in reference to freeing the people of Palestine, and also like trying to, I guess, encourage the people in Germany to come together and to protest and to speak up. And so this was in that context for me, but it can be used in so many different contexts, and it's more or less a variation of Audre Lorde's words from her speech. Yeah,
I think that's how we got it in the 90s, from Audre Lorde. Does it ring a bell for you, Jay?
To me, it's as simple as the universality of human rights.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you realized tonight there will be a lot of conversations, a lot of controversies, conversations that we're entering into with Philippine books. And I'm now very happy to close this, or to open this closure, with the scoring done by Gizem Adyaman. Thank you.
This is a story about a family who lived by the sword. The children of Sulu are born into the culture of the blade. Some grow up to be leaders, some grow up to be followers, but all of them are defenders. 1 year after the death of his father, Prince Ibrahim is now Sultan. He loves his daughter Fatima. That Sabina, however, he is never sure about her. The story of war and the peace they forged was told in poetry. And then there is chaos. The Pangalay is now a dance of death. Welcome to your own assassination, Sultan Ibrahim. Is this the mysterious Alandal? Is he friend really? Or is he foe? Where is his family? An assassin above, and his daughter Fatima below. Sabina, with a dagger through the murderer's heart, is how she becomes the hero.
Yes, thank you everybody again. And now is time to walk freely. You have people on 4 tables to talk to. And for the bookseller, you get 2 books for free, 1 from each table. And enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.